What's up, RotoGrinders? Welcome to another edition of FanDuel Friday, talking some NBA. My name is TJ Zwarych, joined by the one, the only Justin Carlucci. How you doing, my friend?
Well, I'm a lot warmer here in the States than you are. Wherever you are up north there. You're in the negatives up there. How are you staying warm up there?
We do have pretty strong indoor heating, and so that works really well. I got some fuzzy blankets. I wear some hoodies inside, but yeah, it's tough. I was telling you about my exploits last night as my cat sprinted out the door in the middle of the night, and I had to go out in the snow to get him at 4 a.m. It was tough, but hey, we're here because the NBA doesn't rest. The players might load management on occasion, but we're not doing that. We're here. It's a 5-game slate, nice and small for a Friday. It's a little baby Friday slate. And a 5-game slate is kind of right in our wheelhouse, I think, and it's going to be a lot of fun to break down. We got Giannis Antetokounmpo as the primary spend up on this slate. With only 5 games, I feel like we can basically go game by game since we're going to have enough time for it today. Let's start with Milwaukee and Indiana. On the Milwaukee side, we're not waiting for much news here. Giannis is probable. Brook Lopez, Drew Holiday, even Chris Middleton, all going to be in there. So other than Giannis, I don't know if there's a whole ton we want to target here. But having said that, Giannis Antetokounmpo, probably the best play on the slate. And even Brook Lopez gets a little bit of a bump without Bobby Portis.
Yeah, listen, Giannis, since coming back from his brief hiatus, hasn't played more than 30 minutes. And, you see the 45.4 and the 55.8. Per minute wise, he's elite. Hasn't missed a beat. So if somehow, some way, Indy can keep this thing competitive, obviously without Tyrese Halliburton, we'll get there. That's the biggest thing. However, I still think the floor of Giannis on this 5-gamer is a huge deal. And, we have him projected for almost 60 points in 34 minutes, which is pretty healthy here. Bobby Portis out of the lineup, that's taking away at least a dozen shots a game. Rebounding opportunities are going to be there. So, Portis's absence is going to be a big deal. Now, it's kind of like addition by subtraction because now Chris Middleton's working his way back. So, does that make Drew Holiday a little less attractive for you?
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to get to Drew Holiday on this slate. I do think it's wild that Giannis is the best RG value by a large margin, the third best point per dollar play on the slate, and he's the highest priced play on the slate by $1,000. So he's going to be the only buck I think I get to today, other than maybe Brook Lopez in some large field stuff. I don't think I want to touch anybody else on this team.
Yeah, if you're a straight projections person, he's the highest projected player by almost 10 points. So that's a big deal. I do think Ja has some pretty nice upside, but we'll get there. We'll get there. I'm just mentioning Ja because he's the third highest priced player, and there's some injury news we need to figure out there as well. But I guess the gap in potential ceiling is where he's really popping in my eyes too. Lopez 6,500. I don't know what his upside is there at this point. If he was about a grand cheaper, I'd be extremely interested in him. But you're right. This team's a little bit tough to target with the pricing here.
Yeah, Lopez has kind of come back to reality lately, just sticking in that 25 to 30 point range. But I would take shots if I'm playing a ton of lineups, just because if he happens to block 5 shots today, he could end up having a slate breaking performance. But let's pivot over to the Indiana side, because this is an 8.5 point spread right now, but it could get even bigger. Miles Turner is questionable. Andrew Nembhard is questionable. Aaron Nesmith is questionable.
Ugh.
That's a healthy price tag for TJ McConnell. If Nembhard play, and he's one of the heaviest owned plays on the slate. If Nembhard plays, that's probably going to be a fade for me. TJ McConnell's been playing a ton of minutes. He's been playing amazing. But if Nembhard plays, that does kind of provide the opportunity for maybe McConnell to only play 30 minutes instead of 38, 39 minutes. And so I think McConnell will be a fade for me at that ownership in tournaments if Nembhard is in. If Nembhard is out, I think McConnell is a phenomenal play. If Miles Turner is out, Isaiah Jackson is going to be one of the best values on the slate. If you happen to get Turner and Neesmith out, then all of a sudden the plays like Chris Duarte, Jalen Smith, O'Shea Brissett become interesting as well, because these guys are going to be down bodies. Even if you get Nemhard out, Chris Duarte, I think, is a reasonable option today. In tournaments, we see his ceiling upside when he gets the minutes there. And so this Indiana team is very interesting, and I feel like I want to make sure that I get a few of them in my lineups that I'm playing Giannis. If I'm not playing Giannis, then maybe I want to go a fade because I think this is going to be a blowout. But Hield in tournaments, Duarte in tournaments, Jalen Smith and Brissett in tournaments. But if we happen to get Miles Turner and Andrew Nemhard out, then I think McConnell is going to be one of the best plays on the slate.
Yeah. How about our guy Benedict, though? I mean, he is the usage guy. He doesn't really do much other than score the basketball, so it's a little bit scary, especially when you have some pretty good perimeter defenders in Milwaukee. But I think, if you're not willing to pay the price for McConnell, I think our guy Mathurin is kind of interesting. Now, that's if Nembhard is out. If Nembhard's in, it kind of complicates things. And
Neesmith doesn't do much, but that's still high 20s minutes. And so that is a valuable player to get out of the lineup as well when we're looking at guys like Nemhard, or even if we're looking at guys like Brissett off the bench.
Shooting 2 for 22 his last 3 games from the floor. A little bit of a rough stretch there for a guy in Neesmith. But you're right. He's just a body that's taking up playing time. So him being out should open up the door for a couple of these other guys. Probably Duarte, who had 6 steals last game, which isn't sustainable. But anytime you're going to give me a guy at 5,100 who's going to play 30-plus minutes, I think you definitely got to consider Duarte.
The next game, Memphis and Minnesota. This is fun because we got the first game at 7, next game at 7:30, next 2 games at 8, and then a big old break. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out for lineups, but we should hopefully get all the news that we need in Memphis and Minnesota before lock. Now, if we don't, I'm going to get a lot less exposure to this Milwaukee and Indiana game because this is very important news. But let's start here with Memphis. This is the highest total on the slate. Or maybe the Milwaukee Indiana one is. It's pretty close. I'm looking at the totals individually. I don't feel like doing the math in my head, but this is definitely the highest total close spread game. Memphis and Minnesota, 3-point spread, 120.75 total for Memphis, 117.75 for Minnesota. Memphis has Desmond Bane questionable. They have Steven Adams already out. Brandon Clark is one of my favorite plays on the entire slate. I don't think he's picking up enough ownership. He played 32 minutes last game with no Steven Adams. He started. Bring me all the Brandon Clark today. Feels wrong to me that we only have him projected for 23 minutes. I feel like it should be more than that. Desmond Bane's also questionable. So if Bane is in, I think he's a decent play. And the Morants and the Dylan Brookses, I think, are fine if Bane is in. But if Bane's out, fire me up all the John Morant. Fire me up all the Dylan Brooks. Give me Tyus Jones. Give me Brandon Clark. Give me Jaren Jackson Jr. However, if Bane is in, I'm going to have a lot less exposure to this Memphis team outside of Brandon Clark.
Yeah, and maybe we're getting a little sticker shock with Brandon Clark. However, you've been doing a ton of NBA content, and I'm assuming you've discussed it. Value is far and few in between on FanDuel lately. They've been really aggressive with their pricing algorithms. So I feel like 5,600 is the old 4,600, right? Like if you're getting a TJ McConnell at 7,400, who could be in a very nice role, but if Desmond Bane's out, and I'm looking at Dylan, a discount of 2K to throw into Dylan Brooks for my value, or Brandon Clark, who are both in the 5K-ish range, they go up and pay for 74 for a guy like TJ McConnell. Brooks and Clark have TJ McConnell's upside. And if Desmond Bane's out, odds are good. At least one of them outscore McConnell, especially if Nembhard plays, right? So I think we're just seeing a little site-wide sticker shock with how aggressive FanDuel's been in their pricing that, I'm totally okay with paying $5,600 for Brandon Clark. He was mega chalk a couple games ago against Sacramento. I had DJ Chark in there because I was just looking at wide receiver free agents this year. But Brandon Clark was in serious foul trouble against Sacramento a couple games ago, couldn't get off the ground. And then they decided to start Xavier Tillman. I don't know why, and he was terrible. However, the last game they started Brandon Clark because they realized he is the superior player of the two, and he rightfully is. So I think Brandon Clark will start again. I don't care if Rudy Gobert plays, and I'm pretty sure he will, by the way. Clark is a 1+ point per minute type producer. I'm with you on Brandon Clark. Dillon Brooks does nothing but piss me off every time I roster him, it feels like. But at this price and the opportunity and the potential pace of this game, you have to have interest in Dillon Brooks as well. Now, if Desmond Bane plays, I will probably pump the brakes on Dillon Brooks, but I'll still have interest in Brandon Clark for sure.
Now, the highest owned player on this team at the moment that we're projecting is Xavier Tillman because we're currently projecting him to start. Now, if you and I are both wrong, Brandon Clark is back to the bench, Xavier Tillman is in the starting lineup, how would you prioritize Tillman and Brandon Clark?
I could be the minority in this, like on this perspective, but I still think Brandon Clark had the higher upside and will probably play about the same amount of minutes as Tillman, maybe even more off the bench. We've seen Tillman start before and play like 19 minutes,
If Tillman's really going to be 30+% owned, I honestly think it's as simple as they both have power forward center eligibility. They're only 800 apart. If Tillman starts, you play him in cash, and you play Brandon Clark in tournaments today. I will be back on Crunch Time tonight with Andy Means. So when he's breaking down the core plays, I'll be talking tournaments. If we get that starting lineup before lock, I'm sure that is what we are going to be discussing. And it's likely going to be Brandon Clark in tournaments and Xavier Tillman in cash.
I kind of disagree with the ceiling projections a little bit. Like in my eyes, Brandon Clark forever has the higher ceiling between those two players. And I get it. Like Tillman once in a blue moon has those games, but I feel like you need Jaren Jackson out too. Like you would just need 10 more minutes out of Tillman, I think. Because he's just
that's the biggest thing is because even though we have the power forward eligibility, he's only going to play center. He's only going to play at the center position, whereas a guy in real life, whereas Brandon Clark will play the 4 or the 5. He can kind of roll anywhere out there. He could play with Aldama and Jaren Jackson. They could run him out of the 3. And so because of that, especially against a team like Minnesota, where they're a big lineup, their point guard is D'Angelo Russell. Their shooting guard is Anthony Edwards. Their 3 is usually Jaden McDaniels or Kyle Anderson. Brandon Clark can go out there and play the 3 today, but Xavier Tillman can't. So I think Clark has by far the more upside. Let's pivot over to Minnesota here. We have Rudy Gobert currently listed as questionable. If he's in, he currently rates out as one of the top point per dollar plays on the slate. And he is also currently projecting for upwards of 30% ownership. To me, that feels like an easy fade. Yes, he plays mid-30s minutes. Yes, he's been getting there lately, but 30% owned Rudy Gobert at almost 8K. I don't think I want to go there. But if he does play, that is probably your cash game center today. If he is out, your cash game center is going to be Naz Reid today. And I would prefer that. I would way rather get to some chalk starting Naz Reid as opposed to chalk Rudy Gobert, just because I think they have similar ceilings in those types of positions, with obviously Naz having a much lower floor, but he's also $2,600 cheaper. So if Rudy Gobert is in, to me, this is basically just D'Angelo Russell, Anthony Edwards, and Rudy Gobert. I'm not interested in anybody else. Yeah, Jaden McDaniels, and I would maybe be interested in Jaden McDaniels in tournaments, but not coming in at like 30% ownership. That's seems like a pretty darn good fade to me. So if that drops, Jaden McDaniels, I think is fine. Kyle Anderson, if Rudy Gobert plays high ownership, not for me. I'm out. But if Rudy Gobert's out, then I'm interested in these two plays. If Rudy Gobert's in and those stay high owned, I'm going to be out, and it's just going to be the big 3 for me.
Yeah, I understand there's not a lot of value, but also if Gobert plays, I don't want a 6,400 Kyle Anderson at 38% ownership either. I mean, Slow-Mo has his games, but he needs the stars to align, to hit 6x at this price, I think. I will say about Anthony Edwards, if we're pricing Gobert at almost 8K, McConnell 7,400, and all these guys are getting priced up, Edwards should be 10K, especially in this matchup. I mean, he's coming off a 70 bomb against Houston, dropped 51 against Houston. You know, his usage is through the roof. Look at those field goal attempts in the minutes. I think Anthony Edwards is really fairly priced. And I totally understand the D'Angelo Russell thing. He's been playing great and playing a ton of minutes. But I'd rather take the upside of Anthony Edwards between the two for tournaments, I think, and make him a priority over Russell in my eyes.
Big time. Russell's basically going to be a cash game lock if he's going to be this highly owned, but I think that's a great tournament fade, and Anthony Edwards is without a doubt my favorite tournament play on this team. But just to kind of hammer this home, if Rudy Gobert's out, that we're soured on the Jaden McDaniels, Kyle Anderson right now due to that ownership. But if Naz Reid is out, if Gobert is out, all of a sudden that's good chalk, and Naz Reid is going to be one of the better values on the slate. Cleveland and OKC, it's a super tight spread, but this is going to be a good defensive, not very fast game. I want to start on the OKC side, even though we've been starting with the road teams. I want to start with the home team first, just because there's less to talk about. Guys like Kenrich Williams and Aaron Wiggins are projecting his values today. I think that's bad chalk. Jalen, if you want to take shots on Jalen Williams, Josh Giddey, or SGA in tournaments, I think those are great tournament plays because they're not highly owned. But this is not a very good matchup. It's just only a 5-game slate. And so I'm absolutely good with taking shots there. We have Kevin Love and Donovan Mitchell still questionable on the second half of the back-to-back. It sounded like Mitchell was going to be out for a while, but he was also listed as a game time decision and questionable right up until the game yesterday. So I don't know if that was a bluff. I don't know if he's doing a little bit better. He's currently listed as questionable. We may or may not get this before lock. I want to assume Donovan Mitchell is out. And if that's the case, Darius Garland is going to be basically my favorite play on the slate. But this is the second half of a back-to-back. So like we could see something weird like Garland out. If Garland and Mitchell are out, then this is going to open up insane value to Karis LeVert and Raul Neto. Kevin Love was questionable yesterday. He didn't play. Maybe he was just resting one of the back-to-back. And so if he plays today, I think he's a reasonable value. But this is kind of a tough team to break down without this news right now, because basically give me first. If Kevin Love and Donovan Mitchell are in, assume everybody plays. Do you have any interest in this team?
Not real. Honestly, the player I'd have the most interest in would be Mitchell and nobody else.
I think Mobley and Allen would still have a little bit of interest in tournaments, but only if I'm playing a lot of lineups. If I'm playing 1 to 3 lineups, I'm full fading this team if Mitchell's in. But in 150, I would definitely be keeping Mitchell and Allen and Mobley in my pool. If Mitchell is out, how are you prioritizing Darius Garland today in terms of your somewhat spend ups? He's still not very expensive. How are you prioritizing Evan Mobley and Jared Allen among the bigs? And then how are you prioritizing Karis LeVert for value?
My best guess is Mitchell does not play. Chris Fetter, Cleveland.com beat writer, posted an article after the Knicks game who said that the Cavs were internally expecting a multi-game absence for Mitchell after the injury. We saw him miss on Thursday. I would just be surprised again if he plays on Friday. We do have him currently projected in. You know, we have him projected in with Garland pushing 41 fantasy points. So he's going to pop the most in projections. I would have a ton of interest in Garland in a very close game here. Despite the mediocre team total, Garland's the guy here. That assist rate jacks up quite a bit without Mitchell as well. So it's not only scoring the basketball, his passing, he becomes an elite dual threat guard without Mitchell on the court. I understand Allen. I understand Mobley. I don't mind them for tournaments. I would separate them just because of their prices. If maybe one of them was a little bit cheaper, I could understand playing them together in the same lineup. Allen gets like a 4% usage bump without Donovan Mitchell. I'm a little bummed he didn't really get there yesterday. Mobley had the really big game and he was really chalky, but I would consider kind of zagging where everyone else would zig here and go overweight on Jared Allen and either go underweight on Mobley or just play the field or something like that. Karis LeVert, lastly, and then I'll throw it back over to you. At that price without Mitchell, he probably becomes like arguably the best per dollar play on FanDuel at 5,400. If you tell me Donovan Mitchell isn't on this team or isn't playing, he should be a $6,500 player on this slate.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he kind of falls in line with the Naz Reeds if Gobert's out, the Brandon Clarks if he's in the starting lineup, and then the Indiana value that we're getting here as well. So I like that. I like all those calls. If we get some wacky on the back-to-back, I mean, don't be afraid to play Raul Neto or Chetty Osman if they're in the starting lineup. I maybe would shy away from the Dean Wades, Lamar Stevens, Isaac Okoro's no matter what, but Chetty and Raul Neto, if they start, are definitely going to be good value plays and make it super easy to get a guy like Luka Doncic today. Orlando against Miami. If you're playing a ton of lineups, I think you include Paolo Banchero in your pool. I think you include Markelle Fultz in your pool. Franz Wagner, really probably not going to be for me. Wendell Carter, probably not going to be for me. Somebody like a Bol as a value, I think is somewhat reasonable, but I don't know how high the upside is. And I probably want to use my center position somewhere else. I don't know. I don't think I'm playing any Orlando Magic players today.
I'm with you. The only one I kind of moderate interest in would be Wendell Carter, but that's about it.
Pivoting over to Miami, I honestly think it's a very interesting strategy today if you're playing a ton of lineups to just X out this entire game, make it a 4-game slate.
That is interesting. Although I will say, like all things considered, Bam and Butler are very fairly priced. I don't really have interest in Hero when they're all healthy, but we know Bam and Butler both have 50-point upside. Jimmy's been a little helter-skelter lately, but the matchup is fantastic for both of these guys here. I think maybe they're going a little overlooked on this slate.
I don't know. I just don't think it's for me. Like Kyle Lowry back, Victor Oladipo priced up. These guys are all healthy. Butler has been playing bad lately. Bam's been playing better, but I just think there are other better spend up options today. I think Bam and Butler would be, and Harrow would maybe be the only 3 I'd include in my pool, but I don't think I'd want to get more than maybe. No, like I'd honestly, I'm taking a stand. Like I'd X out Butler and Harrow, and Bam would be the only one I'd include in my pool. Bam and Banchero would be the only 2 players I think I'd include in my pool from this game.
You don't have any interest in Caleb Martin carrying 25% projected ownership?
I am out.
I'm out too on him. Well, at least we agree there. And I'm out on all these other sidecar pieces unless we get some late news where people are sitting. But, with everyone healthy, I'm not paying that tag for Oladipo. I'm not paying the same thing for Lowry. Max Strus, no thanks. Gabe Vincent, 18 minutes we haven't projected for. It's not happening. So we're kind of on the same page, but not really, if that makes sense. It's like maybe consider the important guys or 2 of them. That's about it.
If Donovan Mitchell plays and I were running 150 lineups tonight, I think I would go out of my way to just take the stand of Xing out Cleveland, OKC, Xing out Orlando, Miami, and making this a 3-game slate because the first 2 games are so juicy. And then I think this 3rd game is the best tournament game stat game and just the best tournament game of the slate because Memphis and Minnesota, Indiana and Milwaukee, they're going to provide a lot of value for us, provide a lot of great plays. But guess what? They're also going to provide a lot of ownership. This game, not so much. The Toronto Raptors, I think the big 4 are all in a phenomenal spot today. Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet, and OG Anunoby. I'm interested, and Scotty Barnes, sorry. I'm interested in all 4 of them for tournaments. I think they're all phenomenal tournament plays. OG has a poor projection, but that also is leading to incredibly low ownership. And I think this is a guy that just because he's had 4 bad games in a row, nobody wants to play. But this is also a dude that was consistently putting up 35 plus fantasy points every single game. And on a 5-game slate at that price, that could be enough. And so OG Anunoby, Scotty Barnes, Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet, I think all of them are phenomenal tournament plays. Siakam is basically the reason why I don't want to play a guy like Bam Adebayo or Jimmy Butler, because I'd rather just spend up a little bit more for him. Fred VanVleet has an incredibly high ceiling, going to have low ownership. And I just think he's a phenomenal tournament play. Scotty Barnes would probably be the one of this group I'd get to the least, but he's also been playing some really good basketball lately, so I'm more than fine with getting to him. Gary Trent, that's a price tag I don't think I really want to get to for him. He's been playing very well, so if I'm running 150 lineups, I would definitely still get over the field on that 6% we're projecting. But if I'm playing 1, if I'm playing 3, I don't think I can get to any Gary Trent today. Precious Achiuwa's getting his price up there a little bit. I think he's an interesting tournament value because he's getting low ownership. But like this Raptor team is one of my favorites for tournaments today. Like I want to load up on these first 2 games and then make sure I have a little bit of late night hammer from Toronto and Golden State.
Yeah, I think Siakam is probably my favorite play on Toronto. Not really excited about Gary Trent. I understand OG's price is fantastic, and we've seen the 3 to 5 steal games. I mean, he went like 40 games last year without it with consecutive like a steal or a block recording. So he can rack up the garbage points, and we know this pace is going to be fast. A nice pace up spot for Toronto here. Just use your build rules and separate these guys. I don't know how many of these guys are going to get there together unless, we have an anomaly type shootout or the game goes to overtime. But, would I play Siakam and VanVleet together? I don't know. Would I play like Barnes, VanVleet, and Siakam? Would I play more than one of them? I'm not sure. But would I play one of them with one of the 6K guys? Yeah, I can see that happening. Like price-wise, OG or Trent paired with one of those higher priced Raptors could both get there, I think.
I do think I would be okay with playing 2 of them if I'm running it back with somebody on this Golden State team. I do think it's a super interesting idea for tournaments to fade Giannis and play Steph Curry, Pascal Siakam, and Fred VanVleet. We can afford to do that. None of these guys are that expensive. While it has been very difficult to find cheap value on FanDuel, what I do love that they've been doing this year is like, kudos to them because it's more difficult. But Giannis, Luka, Jokic, these guys are priced high, right? But the sort of second tier fantasy stars like the Steph Currys, the Ja Morants, Dame Lillards, Kyrie Irvings, they chill in that 10K range. And so we can afford these guys. Steph Curry and Pascal Siakam together with a guy like VanVleet, I think that's a wonderful tournament stack today. Jordan Poole in tournaments, I think you can get to because we got Andrew Wiggins questionable. That would up his minutes a little bit. Plus, when he comes off the bench, he just puts up massive usage whenever Steph's not on the court. Klay Thompson, I think, is an interesting play today. But the guy that I want to get to the most is definitely Steph, just based on he's going to have VanVleet guarding him. VanVleet's a good defender, but Steph can still shoot over top of him because VanVleet's only like 5'11", 6 feet with shoes on. And every other person on this Raptor starting lineup is a borderline all-NBA defender. Scotty Barnes, OG Anunoby are just like elite on-ball defenders. Pascal Siakam and Gary Trent are very good on-ball defenders. So Curry might draw Trent, but I just don't really see anybody else in the starting lineup they could pop him on unless it's Poole. And so I really like that today. I Poole and Curry are going to be my favorite 2 to get to. Klay, I just see likely drawing OG Anunoby following him everywhere. And so that's why I'm not as fond of it, but I would still probably get over that 5% rate in tournaments. Draymond Green picking up almost 20% ownership is the guy that I would want to get underweight on. I never really liked chalky Draymond Green. He's been playing really good basketball lately, playing a ton of minutes, filling up the stat sheet. But like, if he's not getting 3 to 4 stocks, I just don't think he's going to pay off that price tag. And so I would want to be at the field or a little under. Not going to get to any Andrew Wiggins, especially with that Q tag, but I would want to mix in a little DiVincenzo in the pool, a little Jordan Kuminga in the pool in case Wiggins doesn't play.
I like Draymond tonight. I'm okay. I don't think that ownership number is out of control. Since Kevon Looney transitioned to the bench, his rebounding rate's way up. His minutes are like in the mid-30s. He correlates well with Curry because oftentimes when the ball goes in from Curry, it's off a Draymond Green assist. So I like Draymond Green. I think the price is fair, all things considered. So I'm a little bit kind of on a different viewpoint there as you are. We'll have to see what happens with Wiggins, because I don't like Jordan Poole even more. I like that call. Poole's been nothing but consistent at 7,600. I think he has a really high floor for FanDuel scoring anyway. I mean, it's tough to get a lot of guys in. If Poole's like your last piece in, I think I'd feel okay with that, especially if Wiggins is out.
You bring up a really good point with Draymond Green. I did a poor job of verbalizing that because I don't like him as much as Steph Curry and Jordan Poole, but he is still a good play today. You're absolutely right. And this game in general is just, I think, brings so much tournament goodness, so much abundance of upside without the ownership going with it. So get your value from Milwaukee, Indiana, Memphis, Minnesota. Wait for those starting lineups. Wait for that news. Maybe get some Cleveland value based on that news. And then let's go to OKC and Toronto for some tournament value today. Any hot takes before we get out of here, Luuch?
Hot takes. Trying to think of a good one for you. We covered a lot of ground.
My biggest one is going to be Giannis Antetokounmpo will not be optimal today. I think Anthony Edwards paired with a little Raptor Golden State stack is going to be winning tournaments today. And Darius Garland in there as well if Mitchell doesn't play.
My hot take is Giannis is optimal, but you need Buddy Hield with him, who goes for 45. So there's your run back.
That is a hot take with Buddy Hield. I love it. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and I'll be back later tonight on Crunch Time with Andy Means and Kevin Roth. So make sure you tune in for that. And we're going to break down this slate once again after we've heard some of this news. Andy's got cash games. I've got tournaments, and Roth is going to be there doing the best job of hosting that anybody does in this industry. So thank you so much for joining us today on behalf of myself, TJ Zwarych, our wonderful production team behind the scenes, and the man, the Luuch, the legend, Justin Carlucci. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're out of here. Peace.